Kalani Sitake is happy with his recruiting class. He just completed it, and here to discuss it, and I'm going to talk slowly here as DJ moves back over to the board, is recruiting guru Jeff Hanson of CougarSportsInsider.com, which is part of the 24/7 Sports Network. And Jeff, we welcome you to the Wise Guys. Thanks for hanging out with us on this Monday.
Appreciate it. Happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me on. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good, Jeff. It's good. Great to have. I don't know why we haven't had you on here yet. We should have had you on here a long time ago.
It's a treasure trove of knowledge.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Well, hey, I hope so. I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
At what point did you realize that college football was becoming a year-round thing?
Man, I've always been a big recruiting guy, so I've always kind of paid attention to it, year long, because recruiting never stops. But I think in the last few years, when I started to get tired in the months of June, I'm like, holy cow, there's a lot going on for the month of June. That's when I realized it kind of shifted. Recruiting never stopped, but now it never slows down either. It's pretty gnarly all year long.
Yeah, BYU just signed, well, if we include both signing dates, right? 31 kids, and they welcome back 8 missionaries as well. People forget about that. They announce them, but they forget along with the kids they signed from the portal and out of high school.
Their preferred walk-ons,
yeah,
too.
The preferred walk-ons coming too. But 31 signees, 8 missionaries, the preferred walk-ons that Dave mentions. How do you feel about this class for Kalani Sitake?
I really like the class. I've been asked that question a bunch in the last few weeks, and I think there's two I guess paradigms that you can really look through. And the first one, you compare BYU to where BYU has been. And in that respect, this is a really, really good recruiting class. BYU landed a couple of 4-stars that, throughout that decade of independence, they probably aren't getting. They flipped some guys from Power 5 programs. It's definitely BYU's strongest recruiting class in several years. And there's an argument to be made that it's the strongest class, since, the Jake Heaps class back in 2010. I think you could make that argument. Now, there's another paradigm, though, that you compare BYU with where they want to be, right, with the rest of the Big 12, and that's competing for championships. And there's still a lot to be desired there. So the steps that BYU has taken compared to where BYU has been absolutely need to be celebrated, because it's a huge deal. I mean, to have a recruiting class like this, to make the strides that BYU has made, that's a huge win and a huge testament to what these coaches are doing. But there's still work to be done. And I think fans need to be careful to not celebrate too much, because there is still work that needs to be done. But it is a celebratory cause to make the strides that Kalani Sitake and his staff have made over the last year or so.
Cougar football recruiting guru Jeff Hanson on the Wise Guys. We're live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and ysguys.com. Our live streams hopping from around the world. He also covers the Cougars for CougarSportsInsider.com. What other trends do you notice in this recruiting class, which is really BYU's first as an actual member of the Big 12?
I think the biggest thing, and Jay Hill, Kalani, they both kind of talked about it, was BYU didn't shy away from the recruiting competition. And I think if we're being honest, I think if you got the coaches, you gave them some truth serum. I think in the last few years, when they would see some of the big boys get involved, some of those Power 5 schools, they would kind of shy away. Maybe they wouldn't break away contact entirely, but they would take a step back and start looking for their plan B or plan C. That didn't happen this year. It didn't matter whether it was Texas Tech or whether it was Utah or whoever it was. BYU, if they wanted somebody, they continued to stay in the fight. Now, they lost some recruiting battles, but they won a lot more than they had. And I think that's a really encouraging trend. It's something like 86% of the guys that BYU signed had competing Power 4 offers. 86% is not 100%, but in years past, it's been in the 40s. Less than half of the recruiting class would have that Power 4 offer, those competing offers. So BYU didn't shy away from competition, and that is super encouraging, because there's going to be a lot of competition moving forward.
Jeff, I've heard inside and outside the program, and I want to get your take on this for sure, where people go, yeah, sometimes we don't get the stars because we get an LDS kid, and we still use that term LDS, but from Northern California, and he commits after his sophomore year, and it doesn't matter whether that kid really should be a 4-star or not, he stays a 3-star because he committed to us. So say a Fred Warner commits after his sophomore year, which this isn't the case, but and then he's Fred Warner and he's great. And they go, well, Fred would never be more than a 3-star recruit because he committed to us. Does that go away with BYU being in the Big 12, or was that ever really a thing?
I from a rating standpoint, it might have been a thing. I think it would be silly. I look at a guy like Connor Pay, who's exactly what you described, Blaine. I mean, he committed early. He could have got a ton of offers, a ton of attention. He could have chased offers, gone to camps, chased the spotlight, and his rating probably would have climbed. But he was happy where he was at. He knew he wanted to go to BYU, so he didn't do that. So I think that there are certainly some examples where that's exactly what happens. But I think what's changed, and I've got to go, back to when Matt Bushman was being recruited. Matt Bushman, out of Arizona, highly recruited guy. Once he committed to BYU, I talked to a number of different schools and contacts along the way. That at that point in time, they said, he's committed to BYU. LDS dude going to BYU. We're not even going to try. It's not even worth it. He already has it locked in. And I think Matt Bushman, his rating was probably capped as a result because there just wasn't a whole lot of attention. But nowadays, I think that's changed. And I don't know why. Maybe it's independence. Some of these other schools thought they could flip guys. I don't know what it is. But now you get a guy like Reiner Swanson this year, plays the same position as Matt Bushman. He committed to BYU. Everybody kind of knew where he was going to go, but that didn't stop schools like Texas and Oregon from making a push all the way up until the very end. And then even after he committed, still trying to get him to flip from that BYU commitment. And his rating climbed as a result, as there was a ton of attention and he had a lot of spotlight on him. So I don't know, Blaine. I mean, to answer your question, I think historically, yeah, there was probably several examples of that you could point to in every class. But right now, I don't know what it is, but schools aren't as intimidated by that BYU commit. So they're going to continue to chase guys, even though they're committed to BYU.
Kalani said in his press conference announcing this February class that they've changed their strategy to go get guys who are ready now instead of guys that they can develop and in 4 years have ready to go. And I think the first year of the Big 12 kind of revealed where they were depth-wise. So of this group that he's brought in, let's put you on the spot, who in this group do you think will be on the field competing for minutes on the last Saturday of August?
Yeah, I'm a big fantasy football guy. And so when I'm looking at fantasy football, there's a couple of things. You've got to have talent, but then there has to be opportunity for somebody to play. And so I think when you look at early contributors for BYU, it's the same kind of equation. There's got to be talent. There's got to be guys who are ready as true freshmen, but there also has to be an opportunity for that true freshman to step onto the field. So for me, I look at the free safety spot. BYU was riddled with injuries last year. There were walk-ons that were filling out both the 1 and 2 spot of the 2 deep in that latter third of the season. So I think the opportunity is going to be there because it's wide open. There really isn't any one guy or even a couple of guys that you look at and say, absolutely, it's going to be one of those 2 players. So for that, I look at a guy like Tommy Prasis. He's not the highest rated recruit in this class, but he's already on campus. Jay Hill loves him. He really impressed Jay Hill at a camp over the summer. He's a super smart guy, already learning the playbook. I think he's going to have an opportunity to play. I think Falatau Satuala, who BYU said that he's going to stick at the free safety spot. Satuala's just got so much talent that he's going to be really, really difficult to keep off the field. And then again, kind of that same nature of try to find the opportunity. BYU needs help on the interior of the defensive line. Danny Saili is a lot. He's a big dude, and he's going to have an opportunity to play because, one, he's talented. He's very, very good. But BYU needs help, and they need help right away. So a guy like Saili is going to be looked at and given more opportunities than, say, a highly touted linebacker who maybe would come into this class, but he's going to be buried on the depth chart because that depth chart's a little bit more concrete at this point.
Yeah, or wide receiver, which is just loaded, coming back. So, and you've already alluded to some of this. You mentioned the safeties and perhaps the defensive line. Are there other areas of this team that as you look at BYU's makeup and what they recruited the last couple of years and what they put on the field last year, that you go, I have some concerns about this position group? Is there another one, a running back, quarterback? Is there another group that you go, I wonder?
Yeah, I think you hit them both right there. Running back, you have to look at a little bit. I'm a little bit higher on what's coming back. I think BYU has a little bit more depth than maybe the average fan does. I like Hinkley Ropati coming back a lot. I think LJ takes a big step forward. But the quarterback position, Blaine, I mean, that's BYU's bread and butter. When BYU's good, they have good quarterback play. I like the quarterbacks that are in the room, but there's no question in my mind that they don't have that bona fide, this is your clear cut number one, no matter what. And in some respects, I think that's good because I think there's going to be competition. These guys are going to have to fight and compete for a job all throughout the offseason. I don't think that Aaron Roderick's going to anoint a starter coming out of spring ball. I think there will be healthy competition all summer, and that's good. But until you see somebody in week one come out and do what they're supposed to do within the offense, I think you have to be concerned with what BYU has at the quarterback spot right now.
Jeff Hanson of 24/7 Sports on the Wise Guys, breaking down BYU's recruiting class and previewing spring practice here on the Wise Guys. Let's take that a step further. If Gary Bohanan, and we were both impressed by him, he was here last week on Wise Guys, and we were also impressed with Jake Retzlaff. The only problem with Jake is he went 0 for 4 when he got his moment at the end of the season. That's the last we remember because that was the last we saw. If Bohanan is healthy, and he claims that he is, and they scouted him out before they brought him in, we're eager to watch him play. But is he not exactly what Aaron Roderick wants to run that offense? Big body, strong arm, very mobile, with a whole lot of experience, and he's got a Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I think so. I think we saw last year with Keaton Slovis, Retzlaff, Ryder Burt. I mean, everybody was new in the room. So there was so much learning what the offense was, learning where you can take chances, learning where your reads are. And we saw some of those struggles as it looked like quarterbacks, they were processing a little bit slower than we were used to with Jaron Hall and Zach Wilson. And so I think Gary Bohanan's experience with the offense, his experience at high levels of college football, absolutely is what Aaron Roderick is looking for. It really comes down to that health. I mean, a shoulder injury, a pretty major shoulder injury that knocked him out for all of last year, that's a big question mark. Now, if he can prove to be healthy, and I've talked to some people, some friends down at USF that were there when he was going through some of his rehab that said, hey, he looks healthy. He looks better than he did when he got to USF the first time. I mean, so people think that he is healthy. He's got to come out and prove that. And if he can, I agree with you, Dave. I think he's exactly what Aaron Roderick likes because he is poised. He can move around a little bit, but he can facilitate an offense. And I think in this offense, while you would love to have a Zach Wilson or a Jaron Hall that's that true NFL type player, I think there's enough weapons on this offense at the receiver position and running back that if you just have somebody who can protect the ball and facilitate things, this offense can move and be significantly better than they were a year ago.
You mentioned just a minute ago, LJ Martin said you thought he'd take a big step forward, but that's always a position where you have to have depth. You also mentioned Ropati. Is this a position you feel like, no, there's enough depth there that they're okay? Or is this one where you take another peek in the next transfer portal opening to see if there's somebody out there that fell through the cracks to come in and bolster that running back group?
I think they would love to add another running back. They don't have the scholarship capital that you can say, absolutely, they have to go get another running back. So there's still another transfer portal window, and depending on what kind of attrition BYU sees coming out of spring ball, maybe a scholarship opens up, and then I would immediately put running back right towards the top of the list of positions you've got to go and get and find somebody who can at least push the rest of the group. But as it stands right now, I think BYU has probably 3 guys that they feel okay with. I think they feel great with LJ. Hinkley Ropati coming back, I think, is a good thing. Miles Davis coming back. So I think they have 3 guys that they feel pretty good about. If they can add a 4th, great. Otherwise, you're hoping that Enoch Nawahine steps up. Maybe they bring Luve Hilo back from the defensive side. He played some running back last year. So they have some options if a scholarship doesn't open up. But as it stands right now, I think the scholarship capital is going to prevent them from saying we have to go get a running back in the spring window.
A couple of questions on the live stream talking about that offensive line, the guys in front of the guys that we're talking about. The running game was terrible last season. New line coach. Pay's back, Kime's back, a couple other guys are back. How do you feel about the offensive line moving forward? And is last year just kind of an enigma, or is there a major overhaul of running attack that needs to get done in the spring?
Well, to answer the offensive line, I kind of look at the defensive line as maybe the case study for what the coaches are thinking. The defensive line had its own set of struggles last year. BYU, struggled stopping the run and struggled, mightily at times. And look at what they did with the recruiting class. They went out and they added a ton of talent along the defensive line. And it was clear to me that Jay Hill, Kalani Sitake, they said, hey, we have a talent problem at the defensive line. We need to bring more in. So you look at what they did on the offensive line, and if we conclude that, hey, the defensive line had a talent problem, so they went and added a bunch, look at the offensive line and look at what they did, right? Actions speak louder than words. They got rid of an offensive line coach, brought somebody else in, a new voice, but they went out and they fought hard to keep Connor Pay, to bring Caleb Etienne back, to bring Braden Kime back. They're trying to bring guys back, and they didn't go out and add a whole bunch. Now, they may still add one or two more, but they didn't go out and add bodies at all costs on the offensive line. They kind of rolled with continuity and tried to bring some guys back. So to me, that says that Aaron Roderick, that Kalani, they're looking at this offensive line and saying, nope, this was a coaching problem, a schematic problem, a game plan problem, whatever problem that they addressed with a coach, but they think they have the requisite talent to compete if they can get the coaching spot right. Now, they got to add some depth. I think they'll still probably look at one or two. I know they've had scholarships, kind of earmarked for an offensive lineman or two. I think that still is the case. But I think by and large, they feel better about the talent level of the offensive line than say they do the defensive line.
What's your thought on the new coaches that were brought in and what they'll bring to this offense? What changes might we see offensively with the new offensive line coach and new tight ends coach?
Yeah, I look at everything through a lens of a recruit, right? So as soon as these new coaches are hired, I want to try to reach out to as many of the recruits that they're recruiting to kind of get a feel for like, hey, what are they selling? What do you think? What do you think about these guys? And the resounding feedback that I've heard about Coach Woods is that he's a hard-nosed guy. I mean, he's a no-nonsense guy. For a fan base that has clamored for accountability and somebody to bring some discipline or whatever, adjective people have wanted to use, they've wanted that. And it seems like TJ Woods is that guy. He's a no-nonsense guy. I look at what he has done throughout his career when he's had elite talent or even good talent, right? Back at Utah State, at Wisconsin, and even at Oregon State, he's been really good when he's had talent. Now, he's been at some places like, Georgia Southern or Western Kentucky that hasn't had that level of talent, and there's been some struggles. But when he has talent, he brings results. And I think you're going to see a disciplined offensive line. I don't think you're going to see, missed blocks and pre-snap penalties. Now, you hope that he can design a game plan with Coach Roderick. They can figure out the schematic side of things. But I don't think BYU is going to allow themselves. I don't think Coach Woods, rather, is going to allow BYU to be beat because of effort and to be beat because of being in the wrong spot. If these guys don't know their assignment and they're not given 100%, they will not play. Now, Coach Gilbride, you mentioned him. The same thing. I talk to recruits. That's what I want to know. That's kind of my barometer for how people are feeling about him. And recruits are excited. Admittedly, they didn't know much about him, right? I don't think a lot of people knew very much about him when he got announced. And so everybody looked at the press release and took to Wikipedia to find out, hey, he's got a pretty impressive NFL resume. But other than that, we didn't know much about him. But recruit feedback so far has been that, wow, this guy really knows ball. They can sit and talk X's and O's with him, and he demands a high level of execution as well. So I think BYU's added two, disciplinarians, whatever word you want to use to describe them. I think they've added two coaches that are going to bring a different feel to practice, and then you're going to see a different result on the field in games as a result.
Well said, Jeff. Interesting thing to me, it seemed like when BYU ran the ball better toward the end of the year last year, and we talked about this a lot on the air with our other analysts, they ran a little more downhill. It fit the running back style, even LJ's a little bit, where rather than run zone, especially outside zone, they ran some counter and power. The one thing I do know about TJ Woods is that he's got a great history of teams that run counter and power and pull guards and tackles. And so I would bet we're going to see a lot more of that in the offense next year. I think it fits the style of these offensive linemen and the running backs BYU has coming back. So look for that a little bit. I think we'll see a little more of that.
Chris Brooks and Aiden Robbins would have loved that.
They would have loved that. They would have loved that. Absolutely would have loved it. But I think LJ will love it too.
College football recruiting guru Jeff Hanson with us on the Wise Guys tonight. A couple of more questions, and then we'll hit you up with 5 fun ones. As you look at the fall schedule, Jeff, considering the talent BYU has now, what kind of season do you project?
Man, The Big 12, I'm super happy that BYU's there like everybody is, but they have not done BYU any favors from a scheduling front for 2 years in a row now. I think the schedule is as tough as it gets in the Big 12 with who BYU matches up against. There's no easy weekends. There's no weekends that you're feeling like, hey, this is a definite win once you get into that conference slate. So I think it's going to be a lot how it was last year. The games are going to be tight, and it's going to come down to a couple of plays. Now, I don't think that BYU, as a result of the talent, some of the changes, I don't think you're going to have that stretch where BYU just got blown out by teams there, late October, early November. I don't think you're going to see that, but I do think you're going to see 9 straight weeks in the Big 12 of toss-up games. I think BYU has a really, really difficult slate. I do like the way that it breaks down in terms of thirds. I think having a couple of bye weeks is good. There's no crazy road trip. So if these are the 9 teams BYU has to play, I think that lines up really well for BYU, but they definitely got 9 of the toughest teams to play in the conference.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, couple of questions. This is from Brent Hansen, which somehow I'm feeling is related to you, because he says, what kind of effect is the Big 12 schedule going to have on deer camp?
Yeah, that's an important one for us.
Yes, for your family, it sounds like this is important.
That is an important one. We usually, we can schedule things around conference weekend. There's a Friday night game. So I think the Big 12 looked out for the Hansen family deer camp. There's a bye week now. We can go the whole week and enjoy it.
Thank goodness deer camp.
Brent also says Jeff's always bringing the heat. Keep it up. So that's from Brent. And then Jay Hansen, I don't think related, 1224, says, how does BYU's present talent compare with Utah's? That's what a lot of people are asking out there. Is there really a big talent gap, or is it a depth gap? What's your thought?
That's a really good question, and I like the way you phrased it there at the end. I top level talent, I don't think so. I think it's a lot closer than any Utah fan would like to admit. But when you start to look at the depth of the roster and you look at the entirety of a 2 deep, I think that the gap is a lot more significant than any BYU fan would like to admit. Now, I think recruiting classes like this help close that gap a little bit. But if BYU and Utah were playing in week 1 or week 2, I feel pretty good about BYU's chances to stack up and go man for man against Utah. It's that week 9 game that gets a little bit more questionable because you have to depend on who's hurt, who's coming back. BYU's depth just isn't quite there. I mean, and frankly, Utah's had a 10-year, Power 5 head start, so they should have more depth. But yeah, we would be lying to ourselves if we said that they didn't have more depth, and the entirety of the roster is more talented in Salt Lake than it is at BYU. Right?
So it'd be better for that to be the opener than 9 weeks in.
Yeah. I wish that was the opener every year, but that's just us. So isn't it interesting that BYU has a quarterback that's coming off the shoulder, and it's got to be tested, and how many eggs can you put in that basket? Mm-hmm. And then Utah, since we're talking about the Utes, are putting all those eggs in the basket of Cam Rising, that his major knee reconstructive surgery is going to hold up. And then both are going to take a deep breath and hope for the best.
It's tough, man. I mean, I think, I'm sure you guys followed the Jets as close as I did. And it's really hard to put your eggs all in one quarterback basket. I mean, there's just, even the best quarterbacks still go down for a week or 2 most of the time. I mean, injuries are just so much a part of the game. I think that's a dangerous proposition for both teams. I like where BYU's at because you do have a guy like Retzlaff who has some experience. There is going to be a competition for the starter. Where Utah, they've got Rising, and if he stays healthy, great. That's a happy day for the Utes. But if not, well, we saw this year up in Salt Lake that it was just kind of a carousel of quarterbacks, and as one struggled, there wasn't really anybody to step up, so they kind of had to live with those struggles. It's a dangerous proposition when that's the game plan.
See, Jeff just solidified what I say all the time. Quarterback's the most important position in team sports.
He does say that.
So, and it is true.
All right, we're ready to hit you with 5 questions. We sure appreciate you on this show, and we want you on the show more often, and we blame ourselves, so we apologize, but here we are tonight. Are you ready for 5 quick ones?
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay, your favorite sports movie, Jeff?
Man, I'm a big fan of the Sandlot. Maybe it was in Utah.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but
Do
the
you know what?
Sandlot
No-
Up
it
in
doesn't get
Lehigh.
better.
Nobody has said the Sandlot yet, and that when Jeff says that, that just brings back so many warm, fuzzy, good feelings for me. I love the Sandlot.
It wasn't Lehigh, but it was up in Salt Lake County, I think.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Tooele, maybe.
Yeah, stuff in
somewhere out there.
Ogden, stuff in Solomon.
Man,
Yeah.
that is so many great lines.
And you know, yeah,
Oh,
there's
come on, hurry
a lot
up,
of
Benny.
quotes.
My clothes are wearing out.
How many of us
They're
have
going out
ever?
of style. They're going out of style.
How many of us have said when something goes haywire, you go, "I blame myself."
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it comes from that kid who thought they could get the ball out of the beast's
and who
backyard.
Who can forget the Benny
Okay.
the Jet Rodriguez?
Sandlot, that's great.
So awesome. Your favorite singer or band?
Oh man, I think if you would have asked me a few days ago, I probably would have jumped on the Taylor Swift train, but I think I'm all Taylor Swifted out these days. So I don't know anymore.
You're swifted down.
It hit a boiling point. You know, there was so much Taylor Swift.
There's
I'm
too
ready
much
for a
of it.
break.
Yeah. So who are you going to go with then?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I don't know.
Who's your backup to Taylor Swift? Or
Yeah,
is she
I've
like
been
Cam
listening to a
Rising?
lot
If
of
she's
Garth
out,
Brooks.
you're just in limbo.
I'm just out. I'm podcasting. No, I'm a country guy. I've been listening to a lot of Garth Brooks recently.
Oh, old school
Old
country.
Dominion, Morgan Wallen. A lot of country.
Hey, have you heard that?
I
The new
love
song
Old Dominion,
by.
a one-man band, one of my favorite songs.
Have you heard the new song from Keith Urban?
I have not.
Oh, it's good. You should go get it. Watch it on YouTube. It's cool.
Dave needs to
We'll be
listen to
singing
I
that
Don't
live
Want to Be
pretty
a
quick.
One-Man Band as he goes out and does baseball by himself
I
this
gotta
next
be a
week.
one-man band.
I don't want to be a one-man band. That's it. So
I might
don't
be
wanna
singing
be
that.
A Rolling
I might be
Stone
singing that by
alone.
game 3.
That's like, you need to listen to that song. This is applying to you next week.
So we're putting you down for Garth. Are you good
Yeah,
with that?
I'm gonna go. Yeah, Garth. I like Garth.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're
Or
gonna-
I'm gonna go Garth / Old Dominion because I like that. So favorite breakfast cereal.
That is a great question. It probably is Captain Crunch. I'd want to say something a little flashier, but I always go back to Captain Crunch.
Do you
It's
do the
only
Crunch
reliable.
Berries or do you do the plain?
With Crunch Berries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because Dave is a Captain Crunch plain guy. Kristen Kozlowski, the Honey Bunches of Oats, but she said her kids all and her husband's favorite are Captain Crunch.
Plain.
The kids like it with the berries.
Yeah.
The dad just likes it, so she buys the berries and then he gives them all of the berries.
Kids need the berries, but the real men just take it straight.
That's always been my problem, Dave, right there. The real man, I need the bear.
Straight
I
Captain
need-
Crunch.
Jeff, I'm with you. I need the berries. And I save them for last. I eat all the little crunchy things, cut the roof of my mouth up, and then eat 3 mouthfuls of
right.
Hey, by
of
the way,
berries.
John says on our live stream, The Sandlot was filmed around 6th South and 13th West in Salt Lake City, around the corner from my house. So, John, thanks for
Awesome.
getting
Thanks for
in
that,
there,
John.
straighten us out.
This is an extra question. We're going to have a bonus question. I'm going to come to this that Mark Brown just sent out there after we finish these. Your favorite sports moment?
Ooh, my favorite sports moment. I grew up in Atlanta in the 90s, and I became a big Braves fan. And so when the Braves were good in the 90s, I was too little to really embrace it. So when the Braves won the World Series a couple of years ago, that was my manna from heaven moment right there. The Braves winning the World Series.
Yep, long time coming.
All right.
Absolutely.
And then this is the last, but we're going to give you a bonus one. The last one is your favorite change in the college recruiting rules in the last several, because there's been multiple changes. So what's your favorite change for good in college recruiting?
Man, that's a loaded question. I can tell you all the changes I don't like, and there's a lot of those that.
That's why we said let's do, because I could name like 10 I don't like, but I thought let's ask Jeff if there's a good change that he likes.
There's a lot that I don't like. I think one thing that I do like is because, and I don't know that it was a rule change or anything, but because of the early signing period where so many kids are locking in their place right at the end of December, there's that whole evaluation period in January that in years past, that was spent for the head coach doing their one in-home visit. That was what they were allowed to do. But you look at Kalani this year, he only had to do a handful of in-home visits because the class was already locked up. So Kalani was able to do a lot more of the traditional spring recruiting where he's out on campuses, getting to know high school coaches, doing some of that eval that way. And that's something that traditionally has been really kind of an assistant coach job. I thought that was cool to get the head man out just abroad at all of these schools, and that he had a little bit more time to do that, I think will help BYU in the future. It helps him, establish those connections with with high school coaches across the country, build out that network. I think that was maybe not an official change that anybody made, but a happy consequence of some changes that happened.
And I agree. That's good for BYU. Anytime Kalani can get in front of kids and parents, he's got a chance.
He's the closer.
He's got a chance when he gets multiple exposures to kids and their parents. He's got a chance to get those kids. He really does.
Yeah.
So,
whether he gets them now or later,
right?
He's got a gift for.
Yeah, he really does. So here's your bonus question that says some. And by the way, John Higley just threw out the line. You're killing me, Smalls.
Yeah, that's another one.
So Mark Brown asked this. Love to know your favorite piece of BYU memorabilia, because you got a bunch of it there behind you that we see on screen. Do you have a favorite piece of memorabilia?
Let's see if I lean the right way. The belt there, the BYU belt, the title belt. It's from my guy. He's a Salt City Swagger. He does it for a lot of different teams. I think he's done some stuff for the football team, the basketball team. He does it for everybody. The origin story of how he got started. He's a cancer survivor, and when he, I guess, was in remission and he got to leave and ring the bell, he wanted to feel like a wrestling champion. And he was there at the children's hospital. He saw these kids that were going through their battle, and he felt like, hey, we've got to do something for those kids. So he started making title belts, and that's how it all came to be. And he would give these kids who had just beat cancer these title belts, and he does a phenomenal job.
That's a great story.
And that origin story just makes that belt. I didn't beat cancer. I'm lucky enough to get a belt, but it's cool for me anytime I get a chance to talk about it.
That's great.
To highlight what he's doing. It's phenomenal work.
Good stuff. People doing good things out there.
Jeff Hanson, you can find him at Rakoto10. What is it, Rakoto 10? ROKOTO 10.
Yeah, I went to Madagascar. It doesn't even really mean anything. It just came from the Malagasy language, and came home, started a Twitter account, and the only thing I could think of was mission stuff. So here we are. It was either a scripture verse or Rakuto 10, and I went with that one.
So Rakuto 10, also CougarSportsInsider.com. We're all busy. We have wonderful careers surrounded around sports and all that, but don't let anything get in the way of deer camp.
That's for sure.
That's absolutely
Priorities, as Brent Hansen would say. So there you go.
Jeff Hanson, thanks for being on the Wise Guys. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
A lot of information we got tonight.
Yeah,
he
good
knows
stuff.
his
He knows
stuff, and you know what? We're going to track his perspective as we get into spring and the summer, and see how it measures up. I think he's got a good beat on things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he puts a lot of work into following all the recruits and how it's going, and not only follows BYU, but where they go at other schools and what they're doing. He follows Utah pretty closely, so we'll have him as a resource.